Aloha Airlines Flight 243, Explosive Decompression, the Miracle of Flight 243. Introduction. A routine flight turned miracle. On the morning of April 28, 1988, Aloha Airlines Flight 243, a Boeing 757, was scheduled for a routine inter-inland flight from Hilo to Honolulu, Hawaii. The plane, with 95 passengers and 6 crew members aboard, took off from Hilo Airport under clear skies and calm conditions. At the helm of the flight was Captain Robert Schornstheimer, a seasoned pilot with years of experience flying for Aloha Airlines, and his first officer, Alfred Nakasone, a steady and reliable co-pilot. Flight attendants ensured passengers were comfortable, and everything seemed to be in order. As the aircraft climbed to its cruising altitude of 2,4,0,0 feet, little did anyone know, this flight would become one of the most extraordinary survival stories in aviation history. The passengers and crew would face an unprecedented disaster, an explosive decompression that would rip the plane apart mid-flight. The events that followed would test the limits of human resilience and the strength of the aircraft itself. It felt the calm before the storm. The flight had been uneventful, with passengers enjoying the stunning Hawaiian scenery below. Flight attendants served drinks and ensured the comfort of those on board. Outside the cabin windows, the sun shone brightly, and the Pacific Ocean shimmered in the distance. There was no indication that this flight would soon become a matter of life and death. As the plane soared through the clear skies, the cabin filled with murmurs of passengers enjoying their brief journey between the islands. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, Captain Schornstheimer and First Officer Nakasone maintained their professional calm as they communicated with air traffic control and monitored the plane's instruments. Everything appeared to be functioning perfectly. However, as with many aviation disasters, what seemed like a routine flight would soon take a disastrous turn: the sudden, violent decompression. Approximately 20 minutes into the flight, the unthinkable occurred. Without warning, an explosion tore through the cabin, and the plane's fuselage began to collapse. The sound was deafening, like a thunderclap mixed with the roar of the wind. The plane was violently jolted, and the oxygen masks were deployed from above. Passengers screamed as the air pressure inside the cabin dropped, and they were thrown violently from their seats. The sudden decompression tore open the fuselage, and the roof of the aircraft was ripped off, exposing the passengers to the open sky. The sudden loss of cabin pressure was a catastrophic event. Passengers felt the force of the decompression with their eardrums popping, while the wind rushed through the cabin. The fuselage was now exposed to the elements, wind, debris, and the frightening realization that the plane was severely damaged. The aircraft had lost a significant portion of its roof and fuselage, and parts of the plane's interior had been ripped away. One passenger was even ejected from the aircraft, although miraculously, they survived. Inside the cabin, the chaos was almost unimaginable. Passengers were terrified, with many unsure if they would survive the ordeal. Yet, amid the panic, there were signs of remarkable courage and calmness from the flight crew, particularly the flight attendants, who worked tirelessly to ensure that passengers were secure and helped with their oxygen masks. The pilots' unshakable calm in the face of disaster. In the cockpit, the pilots were fighting against the overwhelming noise of the decompression. The sheer force of the wind made it nearly impossible to hear one another or communicate effectively with air traffic control. However, Captain Schornstheimer and First Officer Nakasone did not falter. They quickly assessed the severity of the damage, realizing that the plane had suffered explosive decompression and that the structural integrity of the fuselage had been compromised. Despite the overwhelming chaos inside the aircraft, the crew remained focused on their training and mission to bring the plane back to safety. Starbucks' entire purpose is to create loyalty. They began the necessary emergency procedures. Captain Schornstheimer initiated a rapid descent to a lower altitude, where the air pressure was more stable. He communicated with the air traffic controllers, relaying the damage to the aircraft and the need for an emergency landing. Schornstheimer and Nakasone worked in perfect synchrony, with Nakasone monitoring the aircraft's systems and Schornstheimer flying the plane manually, carefully managing its altitude and speed despite the extreme turbulence. One of the most remarkable aspects of this flight was the composure of the pilots. Despite the severity of the damage, the chaos in the cabin, and the uncertainty of the outcome, Captain Schornstheimer remained calm and focused on his mission, to get his passengers and crew to safety. The crew's quick thinking in the face of catastrophe would prove to be crucial in ensuring the survival of everyone on board. As Flight 243 continued its descent toward Honolulu, the extent of the damage to the aircraft became clear. The fuselage had been severely compromised, with large sections of the plane's roof torn away. The aircraft's body was open to the sky, and the cabin was exposed to the elements. Despite these critical damages, the Boeing 737-297 remained in the air, a testament to the aircraft's robust design. The fact that the plane was still flying was nothing short of miraculous. In the cabin, passengers were in shock, many still gripping their oxygen masks, unsure whether the plane would hold together. However, the flight attendants continued their efforts to comfort and assist passengers. They helped calm those who were panicked and ensured that everyone remained safely seated as the plane made its way toward Honolulu. As the aircraft approached Honolulu, air traffic control cleared the runway for an emergency landing. Ground crews had been alerted to the catastrophic decompression and prepared for the worst. Emergency vehicles lined the runway, ready for immediate action once the plane touched down. The tension was palpable, both in the cockpit and on the ground. Captain Schornstheimer and First Officer Nakasone worked together in the cockpit to ensure the plane's stability. The extreme turbulence had made flying challenging, but the pilots remained focused on the landing. They knew that, despite the severe damage, the aircraft was still flyable. They adjusted the plane's speed and configuration for landing, hoping that the landing gear would hold and they could land the aircraft without further catastrophe. The emergency landing was nothing short of miraculous. The Boeing 737-297 touched down on runway 26R at Honolulu International Airport, despite the extreme damage to its fuselage. The aircraft skidded to a halt and emergency crews rushed onto the runway to assist. Everyone aboard Flight 243, 5 passengers and 6 crew members, walked away from the scene, miraculously unscathed. The aftermath was a moment of stunned disbelief. Investigators found that the explosive decompression had caused the aircraft's fuselage to tear open, exposing the cabin to the open sky. The plane had sustained over 1,000 separate structural damage points, yet it remained airborne throughout the ordeal. The aircraft's design, combined with the skill and professionalism of the flight crew, saved the lives of everyone aboard. In the aftermath, investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, conducted a thorough investigation. They discovered that the cause of the decompression was a combination of poor maintenance and design flaws. The fuselage had experienced severe stress fractures due to corrosion, which ultimately led to the explosive decompression. The incident led to significant changes in aviation safety, particularly regarding maintenance procedures. Airlines were required to conduct more frequent and thorough inspections of aircraft, and new regulations were implemented to ensure the integrity of the fuselage and other critical components. Flight crews were also given additional training to prepare for high-stress emergencies like explosive decompression.